Apparently they were farming cabbages and they wanted their field to do so well. They wanted their crop to do super well, such that they had to take a whole boy's life. I don't know how this was supposed to help them. According to Tapiwa Makore, when he was carrying this child's body parts, the sack became super heavy. He had to drop something so that he could carry it, so that it could be light. So he dropped the torso. How does a whole grown man, a 40-year-old man, feel that a 7-year-old boy is too heavy for him to carry? It dismembered this child's body. So now they were literally picking up pieces from everywhere. But one thing was never found, and it's still unaccounted for. That is the head of Tapiwa Makore. Do I think Tapiwa Shamba and Tapiwa Makore Sr. will face the hangman's noose one day? No. So in the year 2020, in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, Zimbabwe was hit by a different pandemic, that of children disappearing and children going missing only to be found dead. One particular case that took the country by storm, that shocked the entire country, that shocked all Zimbabweans, both in and outside Zimbabwe, was the case of Tapiwa Makore Jr. September of 2020, Tapiwa Makore Jr. went missing. He was missing for quite a number of hours, and a search party was launched in his village in Murewa. The following day in the morning, a torso was seen being eaten by dogs. So somebody alerted the villagers that, hey, there's something happening here. And when the villagers came, they checked it out, and his family also came and they checked out, and they saw that it was Tapiwa's torso. That was confirmation that Tapiwa was no more. Now, who was Tapiwa Makore? Tapiwa Makore was a 7-year-old boy from Mrewa. He was born in the year 2013 in a family of 3 siblings, and he was the youngest of the 3. He lived in a village with his family and his siblings, and he went to school just like any normal child. His classmates, his teachers, and all other villagers described him as a very cheerful, very playful, very smart boy who liked to play soccer and who also liked to ride his bike. Now, after Tapiwa Makore's torso was found, an investigation had to be launched. Where was the rest of his body? Where were the other body parts? The police launched an investigation which led them to arresting Tapiwa Shamba, who was a headman for Tapiwa Makore Sr., and that was Tapiwa Makore Jr.'s uncle. The irony. Yes. So after Tapiwa Shamba was arrested, he confessed to having killed the boy and to have chopped the boy's body. Now, Tapiwa Shamba said that he did not do this by himself. He said he did it with the help of Tapiwa Makore Sr. He worked for Tapiwa Makore Sr. as a herdman. And he said he did this crime with the assistance of Tapiwa Makore Sr. He described how he took this child's life. Gruesome indeed. So what was Tapiwa Makore Sr.'s role in this thing? Well, according to Tapiwa Shamba, they went together to take this child's life. He helped him. He even held the child in the uncle's house, in Tapiwa Makore Sr.'s house, before they went to take his life. So Tapiwa Makore the whole time knew what was happening. And he, that is Tapiwa Shamba, and Tapiwa Makore Sr. were meant to sell the body parts of this child for traditional rituals, for some rituals to a traditional healer for $1,500. So according to them, they took this boy's life so that they could get $1,500. However, in the courts, they emerged other statements like they were trying to do a ritual to help them with their cabbage garden. Cabbage, C-A-B-B-A-G-E, cabbage. Apparently, they were farming cabbages and they wanted their field to do so well. They wanted their crop to do super well, such that they had to take a whole boy's life. I don't know how this was supposed to help them. But anyway, after Tafadzwa Shamba had confessed to all this, Tapiwa Makore Sr. was arrested. Thanks Makore was arrested. And Thanks Makore is another uncle to Tapiwa Makore Jr. Apparently, he was involved in this as well. Now, after investigations, after indications, like there were viral videos of Tafadzwa Shamba doing indications, showing the police where he did his crime, where he took the child from, how he walked, and describing everything and what he did with the body. Now, how did the torso end up where it was? According to Tafadzwa Shamba, when he was carrying this child's body parts, the sack became super heavy. He had to drop something so that he could carry it, so that it could be light. So he dropped the torso. How does a whole grown man, a 40-year-old man, feel that a 7-year-old boy is too heavy for him to carry? Think about it. I'm not saying anything. I do not know. But that's what happened, according to Tafadzwa Shamba. So, eventually, after doing all the investigations, the police were led to a pit latrine where the legs and the arms were found. They dismembered this child's body. So now they were literally picking up pieces from everywhere. But one thing was never found, and it's still unaccounted for. That is the head of Tapiwa Makore. Investigations went on. A lot of people were dragged into the case, including Amai Leslie, Tapiwa's aunt. Now, she is an aunt because she is married to Tapiwa's father's young brother. So she was, when this whole thing started, when media was coming to the Makore homestead, she was in the forefront crying out, oh yeah, they murdered our child. These city people, and the city people we are talking about were Thanks Makore's wife and Thanks Makore, Tapiwa Makore Sr. and his wife. These city people killed our child. They come here because we don't have money, because we are broke. They take advantage of us. They do this, they do this, they do that. She was in the forefront crying out, and everybody was like, oh, she is so supportive, she is so supportive. But it turned out that it was probably guilty just speaking. So according to Amai Leslie, her son was asked to tell these guys where the little boy was, and he was given $5, and he told the murderers that Tapiwa was in the garden looking after his family garden, so that animals do not come into the garden. So he was tending to the garden of his family. And this, my Leslie's son, told Tafadzwa Shamba, this is where the boy is. And he was given $5 to do that. And he went to tell his mother, oh, these guys are asking for Tapiwa. I told them where Tapiwa is, and they gave me $5. And my Leslie took the money, went and bought a chicken, which she cooked for her family and ate. But this whole time when we were asking, where's the child? What happened to your child? She was like clueless. She didn't know anything. She couldn't even recall that at one point, Tafadzwa Shamba asked my son where this boy was. My son indicated where this boy was, and my son was handed $5, and we took the $5 and we bought chicken and we ate in the whole, and we had chicken for dinner. She couldn't remember all that. Suddenly, she was lights out. But anyway, like I said, the case dragged in a lot of family members, including Amai Leslie and some other people from the village who helped these guys to carry out their crime. However, after a long time of investigations and compiling the case, the state decided to take their case to trial in July of 2023. The two murderers were found guilty. That is Tafadzwa Shamba and Tapiwa Makore Sr. Tapiwa Makore Sr. aged 60. Tafadzwa Shamba aged 40. The two were found guilty and they were sentenced to death by hanging in the High Court of Zimbabwe.
The demon which drove Tafadzwa Shamba and Tapiwa Makore to commit this murder is relentless and could not be stopped. It can only be neutralized by death. Our hands are therefore bound, and accordingly, it is directed that both accused persons shall be retained to custody and that the sentence of death be executed upon each of them according to law.
Dhimoni rakakubatai vasungwa muri vairi rakashaya kana akaridzora makatadza kudzoreka panguva dzamukange mafunga kuita basa rakaipa zvakadai zvekuti hakuna chimwe chingagona kutsiva ropa ratapiwa makore kunze kweropa renyu imimi muri vairi. Saka ropa renyu richatsiva ropa ratapiwa makore, nokudaro muchadzoserwa mukati meusungwa. Dare rino rikukutongerai rufu.
Now, this is a case that went viral, remember. This is a case that everybody had a keen interest in. Everybody wanted to know what was going on, and everybody wanted to know what was going to happen next. So after the sentence was handed down, Tafazwa Shamba was smiling. I don't know if he was smiling because he was confused or he couldn't believe what was going on, or he was smiling because he's just a murderer. Like, there was a smile on his face. Like, you could see that he was not fazed by what was happening. I don't know if it was a state of confusion. I don't want to judge him. I want to think maybe it was a state of confusion. It is yet to sink in. Or is it that the lawyers had already prepared him that this is going to be your route. This is what's going to happen to you. I do not know. Now, I couldn't tell what was Tapiwa Makore Sr.'s facial reaction when the sentence was handed down because he was in a face mask. But his wife, she just wailed and she was taken out of the courtroom. Obviously hurried to the cars so that the media could not get to her. Understandably so. Understandably so. On the other hand, Tapiwa Makore Jr.'s parents, they had to be interviewed. They have nothing to hide, right? This is the justice that they've been crying for. This is the day that they've been looking forward to. According to Linda Munyori, that is Tapiwa Makore's mom, she said she was happy with the sentence, but one, she was not going to be able to forgive those people that killed her son. Because according to her, her son died in pain. And I think it is true. Because this boy was dismembered before he even died. They didn't kill him first. That must have been a very painful death. So she was not going to forgive them. And secondly, she did still not find closure because no one is willing to tell her where her son's head is. By the way, Tapiwa Makore's body was buried, or could we say body, or remains, or pieces of Tapiwa Makore's body were buried in April of 2021. Okay, that they could not find the head of Tapiwa Makore. Tapiwa Makore's head is still missing. Nobody has said where that head is. It kind of leaves you wondering, why are you still holding on to that information when you are probably going to face the hangman's noose? Why are you still holding on to that information? Is there somebody who's using that head somewhere and making money? Is there somebody that, okay, even if you were told that if you spill, you are going to die. Hello? You're already facing the hangman's noose. Surely that's not a ride in the park. Surely that's not a day in Disneyland. That's death you're staring at. So just say it out and die. I'm yet to understand the logic behind holding on to that information. I do not know. I feel like if Tafazwa Shamba knew where that head was, he was going to spill. But he probably doesn't know. The person who probably knows is Tapiwa Makore Sr. Because to start with, it is said that he's the one who had brought the deal on the table. He's the one who had brought the deal to the table. Now, during all these investigations, there were so many things that were done. A lot of consultations were done. Traditional healers. People were just speaking. At one point, it was said that the head was in Thanks Makore's home, and people went and people just, there was a lot of noise. People were saying we're going to burn his house down. He needs to bring out the child's head. But obviously, it was not found there. Another traditional healer said the head was in Tsvarasekwa. They went there. There was no head. Okay. So basically, no one knows where that head is. But obviously, somebody knows. No one who is willing to talk knows where Tapiwa Makore's head is. And that is the most painful thing for his parents right now. They cannot find closure because they bury their child without a head. Now let's go to the death penalty. Let's go to the sentence that these guys got. Do I think they are going to be executed? Definitely not. I don't think so. Do I think Tafadzwa Shamba and Tapiwa Makore Sr. will face the hangman's noose one day? No, I don't. I don't believe that's going to happen. Not a day. Not even 1 inch. I do not believe that's going to happen. My reasons are very simple. First and foremost, according to Amnesty International, in 2022, we had 62 men on death row in Zimbabwe. These guys have been sitting on death row for 10 plus years. What does that say? That is the first reason. If those 62 men are not sentenced, if those 62 men do not have their death orders signed, why would these 2 men have their death orders signed? Why? How do you even make it sense? How do you even make it make sense? Rather, how does it begin to make sense that these ones are going to jump the queue literally and be in front? Does not make sense to me. So I do not think they'll see the hangman's noose any day. I don't think so. Now, according to the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Section 48, it says that a man between the age of 21 and 70 can be sentenced to death by hanging for murder that's got aggravating circumstances. Okay, and obviously this one is, this is one hell of a murder. So Tafadzwa is 40, he qualifies. Tapiwa Makore Sr. is 60, he qualifies. He qualifies for the death penalty. Now, the second reason I don't think these guys will be hanged is because if you listened very well to the judgment, or to the judge while he was reading the judgment, he said his duty is to hand down a sentence. What happens beyond that is up to the executive. That means he does not sign the death order. Somebody else has to do it, the executive. So the final power of whether they die or they don't lies with the executive. I feel like listening to the judge when he was describing these people, how cruel they had been and how inhumane they were, if it was up to him, he was going to sign that death order that very same day. That was the atmosphere that was in the courtroom on that day. But it's not up to him. His business is to hand down the sentence. Then the executive has to take over and do the signing of the death order. But between the signing of the death order and the handing down of the sentence, there's a lot of appealing that's going to happen there. So according to the lawyers of the 2 accused, they said outside the courtroom, if they are given an instruction to appeal, they definitely will appeal. Now, that means appealing with the Supreme Court, and if they are not happy, they still have to appeal to the highest court in the land, the Constitutional Court. That could take years. That can drag on and on and on and on. And still, if the two courts uphold the same decision, there's still an executive to sign this. Do I see the executive actually signing? No, I don't. I don't think the executive is going to sign this, because we already have 62 people sitting there. The last execution was done in Zimbabwe in 2005. This is the reason we find that now, 18 years later, Amnesty International is asking, why do we still have the death penalty in Zimbabwe if it's not being implemented? Why do we still hold on to this? And from my understanding, there's been a bill that has been tabled before the parliament to have it abolished. Many countries actually have abolished the death penalty, including South Africa. So now, people say that's the reason people are killing each other left, right, and center in South Africa, because there's no death penalty. But does the death penalty really deter these kind of crimes? I do not know. Because I'm trying to understand the mind of a killer. Do they plan that this is what I'm going to do? Well, in this case, in the Tafawa Bashamba and Tapiwa Makore Senior case, they did plan this. But there are some cases where somebody is in the process of a robbery, then something goes wrong and they end up killing somebody. That person is actually supposed to be sentenced to death. Now, did they plan that they were going to kill somebody, or it happened in the process of a robbery? So sometimes I'm trying to understand if this deters a criminal from carrying out his crime. If the death penalty is really a deterring sentence. I'm trying to understand that. But anyway, we still have the death penalty in Zimbabwe, and it hasn't been abolished, and we do not know why it's being upheld. We do not know why we still have it in our constitution when it's not being used. Is there a chance that somebody is hoping one day they will use it? Is there a chance that that is an ace up somebody's sleeve, and one day they'll bring it out and just say, checkmate? I do not know. But what are your thoughts? But anyway, so that's the story of Tapiwa Makore, a 7-year-old boy who was murdered by his uncle and his uncle's headman in the year 2020 in Zimbabwe. His parts of his body were buried in April of 2021. His head was never found, and apparently this was a very much ritual murder. His head was not found. His 2 killers were sentenced to death in the High Court of Zimbabwe in July of 2023. What are your take? What's your take on this case? Was that a warranted sentence? Do you think it could have been something different? Do we still need the death penalty in Zimbabwe 18 years after it hasn't been used? Of course, people say that because there is no hangman, but I still believe that if they really want to hang somebody, hangman is not an issue. Hangman is not an issue. What are your thoughts about the death penalty in Zimbabwe? What are your thoughts about this particular case? Is this the right sentence according to you? Does this give any kind of comfort? What does it do to the families? Because now let's remember this case, this thing was done in a family. Oh, and by the way, Tapiwa Jr.'s family has since moved from Mrewa. They now live in Harare because they said this case has brought a lot of tension in the family. Not only that, but also seeing Tapiwa Makore Sr.'s wife every day was bringing them grief, and it was making them sad and miserable. So they decided that they should move away from the family and start their own family by themselves and stay by themselves. So they moved to Harare, and according to Tapiwa Makore's father, he says he's not sure if he will ever go home. But I'm sure he will, because his son's grave is there. So he will probably want to go there once a while. So sad. It's really sad. Anyway, do comment down below what you think. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your families. And the Lord do you good. And stay away from crime, because if you do crime, you are most likely to do the time. Goodbye.